Do Chinese learners really have an advantage with Japanese kanji? Hey everyone, welcome back to Yulu's Japanese Challenge. Today I'll report to you my Japanese learning process for last month and then talk about a fascinating question. Do Chinese learners really have an advantage when learning Japanese? You might be surprised by the answer. What's your opinion about this? Let me know in the comments. Alright, let's get started with the Japanese report. 皆さんこんにちは、ゆるです。夏が来たので毎日エアコンがないと生きていけません。皆さんが住んでいるところは今暑いですか？涼しいですか？7月は前よりもっと忙しかったので日本語の勉強はまたドラマと漫画の中止になりました。もともとはねちょっと N3 文法の本を読んだりするつもりでしたが結局やりませんでした。じゃあ今回もリンクドラマと漫画の順番で話しましょう。7月はリンクの YouTube の導入機能が壊れていてあんまり使っていませんでした。でもそのきっかけでリンクで新しいポッドキャストを見つけました。東京生まれの若い女性の先生でテーマは面白くていい勉強になりました。一番好きなのはお笑い芸人についてのいろいろ。はるか先生の YouTube とポッドキャストのリンクを概要欄に貼っておきますのでもしよかったらチェックしてみてください。はい、7月はリンクで読んでた単語が23,000個でした。学習時間はいつも通りに10時間頃でしたね。今月はポッドキャストばっかりだったのであんまり話せることがなかったんですけれどもギリギリリンクで日本語の勉強を続けています。次は今月見たドラマをちょっと話したいと思います。7月はね、私にとって綾野剛見放題の月でした。なぜかというと、ネットフリックスがなんだかいろんな綾野剛さんの演じた作品をリリースしました。まずは空飛ぶ広報室を見てすぐオールドルーキーが出てきましたね。1週間後新作品地面師も見られるようになりました。仕事より忙しいスケジュールでしたね。先月は毎晩寝る前に少しだけ漫画を読んでいました。和山山さんの女の園の星の日巻を読みました。よくゲラゲラ笑っちゃいました。めっちゃおすすめです。ところで7月から日本語字幕で初めて見る作品を直接見られるようになりました。それに気づいたのはオールドルーキーを見てた時に聞こえている日本語と見ている中国語字幕が完全に一致していなくてとっても気持ち悪かったので日本語字幕に切り替えました。するとそのままスムーズに見ることができましたね。びっくりしました。しかも特に難しいことをしているとは思いませんでした。これが先月の一番嬉しかったことなので皆さんに報告したいと思います。はい、7月の日本語の勉強報告はここまでです。来月はもっと頑張らないと。またね。Welcome back! Here's the thing. One day I got a comment to my video on why I don't memorize words. It goes, how do Chinese people struggle to learn Japanese words when they already know all the kanji? That's interesting. Let's start by clearing up some common misconceptions. Misconception number 1. Kanji are identical in Chinese and Japanese. Many people think kanji means the same thing in both languages because they look similar, but that's not true. For example, this word means letter in Japanese but toilet paper in Chinese. Please imagine the confusion. Even some kanji, although they appear to be Chinese characters, are completely incomprehensible to us just by looking at their literal meaning. For example, taihen and dorobo, completely no idea. Another misconception is that if you know Chinese kanji, learning Japanese kanji is a breeze. There is some truth to this. It's not the whole story. Take this word, 大丈夫, which means okay or alright in Japanese, but in Chinese it means a great man or an adult man. which can be quite misleading for Chinese speakers. In Chinese, characters and Japanese kanji may look similar, but they can be quite different in many ways. In Chinese, the pronunciation and meaning of a Chinese character in a word usually remains the same. Once you know a character, you can read it in words and sentences. However, the pronunciation of a Japanese kanji can vary between a single kanji and when it appears in words. For example, in Japanese, this kanji can be pronounced as sei in the words gakusei, but when it stands alone as nama, it means raw or fresh. Additionally, in the verb to live, it's pronounced as ikiru, and a few other pronunciations like this. In Chinese, the character shan means mountain. Its pronunciation and meaning remains the same in different words like huoshan, meaning volcano, and shanmai, meaning mountain range. This essentially comes from the basic differences in the Chinese and Japanese writing systems. The Chinese writing system primarily uses logographic characters, where each character represents a word or a meaningful unit. These characters have a strict stroke order and consistent structure. In contrast, the Japanese writing system incorporates logographic kanji characters borrowed from Chinese, as well as two syllabaries, hiragana and katakana. Hiragana is used for native Japanese words and grammatical elements, while katakana is used for foreign words and names. This combination makes the Japanese writing system more complex as it requires proficiency in all three scripts. Another thing to mention is that the same character can be written differently in Chinese and Japanese. This is due to the different simplifications and adaptations that these languages have undergone. Here are some common examples. Despite the many differences, it is undeniable that native Chinese speakers do have some advantages when learning Japanese. But not to disappoint you, they are not as big as you might think. At the end of this video, I'll share some of my personal tips for learning kanji as a native Chinese speaker. Hope you watch until the end. Now let's talk about the real advantages Chinese learners might have. That is, Chinese speakers often recognize kanji more quickly because they are familiar with the character structure. This familiarity can make the learning curve a bit less steep at the beginning. Even if you don't understand the grammar and kana at all, kanji can give you clues. This is especially helpful when traveling, let's say using Google Maps. For example, this place, although I still don't know how to say it in Japanese, I can read it in Chinese like Hegang Ba Fan Gong and recognize the place when I get there. Another advantage for native Chinese speakers is they can get the rough idea in formal context better while have minimal advantage in everyday Japanese. Japanese use more kanji in formal style writing because kanji characters carry specific meaning that can convey complex ideas more simply and accurately than kana alone. For example, it's almost no problem for Chinese to get the idea of this package, but often find themselves completely lost when reading menus at izakayas or Italian restaurant. I really struggled with kana menus like this. Besides what was mentioned above, Chinese learners of Japanese may face challenges similar to everyone else, like different sentence structures by putting the verbs at the end, or particles and verb conjugations. In dealing with borrowed words, I've always been curious about who first decide how to read a foreign word in katakana and how they decide where to put the long and short sounds. And they even got a new Japanese-style nickname for a lot of names. For example, Starbucks, like Starbucks, and then Staba, and also smartphone, like smartphone, and then smaho. Here I'd like to say if native Chinese speakers have an advantage in recognizing and writing kanji, then with the increasing number of borrowed words entering Japanese, especially from English, I even think that English speakers have a great advantage too. Although writing Japanese kanji is quite easy for us, nowadays people type more and write less, so it's a pity that we don't have many opportunities to show off our writing skills. However, since we have been learning Chinese characters since childhood, I think I can also give you a few personal tips for learning kanji. Although kanji looks complex, I think it can be seen as a kind of image, and the writing process is more like a drawing process with fixed stroke order. At the basic level, visualize them and discover the hidden connections between different kanji is a lot of fun. A tree is a tree. Many trees make a forest, right? Also, it can make stories like sun and the moon together form bright. And also radicals, like this one relates to water. So you can learn kawa and umi. The kanji picture books for kids is also a great choice. And here's the last and most important tip. Once you find any interesting clues like this, don't stop there. Get your pen and paper ready, use your eyes to see, ears to listen to the pronunciation, and mouth to repeat, and your hand to write. If there's an app that can tell you the right stroke order, please use it actively. It will be very helpful. And keep repeating until you can immediately recognize and fully familiar with the kanji. Engage all your senses comprehensively, and you will learn better than others. And then encounter them in your favorite learning materials, anime, manga, drama, everything. Please remember the magic of learning a language. The new word will soon appear elsewhere once you learn it. So keep up with the magic. Alright, that's all for today. Please share your kanji learning experiences or any questions you have in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!